All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with this webinar. It's been a minute since we've done a live webinar. We sort of switched our format a little bit this year to include more videos, ongoing video content, and that's made us do a few less webinars, but we want to do a few of these a year, so we're going to do a Q&A webinar. We actually open this up to people who are not members of our group. So if you are not part of our Elite BSC Mastermind group, welcome to this webinar. We're glad you attended. If you guys have questions along the way, you can feel free to pop those in. I'll try to interact with those as best as possible. But we've got a handful of questions, probably 9 different questions that we're going to work through that were all submitted by you all over the last few days. So just to give you a brief overview, myself and Jeff Carmen are doing this webinar. I want to just give you guys a little introduction. I know a lot of you know me, but there are certainly a few that don't. So my name's Jordan. This is a odd picture of me doing a podcast, I think. And so I'm one of the owners here at Frantz Building Services. We're a janitorial company based out of Western Kentucky. We'll do close to $19 million in revenue this year. We've got operations in 3 states, actually about to be our 4th state here very shortly. And then I also own and run Elite Business Coaching, which is a group and online mastermind and coaching group that's dedicated to helping owners and leaders in the janitorial industry. So I did some speaking at BSCI events and write for Contracting Profits. My education background is in civil engineering, but I've never done anything with it. And so I did all that schooling so that I could be a janitor. So Jeff is also on the webinar with us today. So Jeff is our VP of Sales at our organization. Jeff, have you been here 7 years? Is that right?
Yeah, maybe 6, but
okay.
7.
That was my best guess. So Jeff has a team of 3 different people working in the marketing department that he oversees, and they do various things. I'm sure that will come up a little bit today. So this is another off the top of my head. Jeff, have you sold about $7 million in business? Is that about right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
So you've earned your keep here. And probably the most notable thing about you is that you're a Tennessee football fan.
Yeah,
like if we had to describe one thing,
yes,
it would not be your kids or your wife or your religion, or it would be the Tennessee.
In fact, they play tonight, so that's
okay. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So a couple of things for those of you all that are not members of our group. Our mastermind group basically does a few things. Again, it's for owners in the industry, and particularly ones that have companies 400 or 500K in revenue on up. So we have a big part of our group is peer networking. So we have this private exclusive forum that only the owners get to chat with other owners in. And there's always tons of conversations going on in that group. And that's a lot of fun. And there's a lot of good stuff that goes on there. So the next one is education and training. So we're constantly, literally every week putting out videos and additional resources to help owners. And the content's aimed at a little bit of a higher level to help people learn how to grow and scale their company. And then we do some one-on-one coaching. So Jeff does some coaching and I do some coaching. So if you have specific issues that you want us to address, we sort of get down in the weeds and help with some of that. So last announcement before we jump right into the content and the questions. We have our operations workshop coming up here in a little less than 2 weeks. So it's 2 weeks from yesterday. We've hosted probably 4 or 5 different workshops so far. These are live workshops where people will come to our location, and we usually have an audience of between 30 and 35 is about our capacity. Most of these are either owners or key ops people in a janitorial company. And so the last operations workshop we did was a few months ago. We're going to do one more here in a couple weeks. So our registration is probably 2/3 full, and we've got spots for a few more. We usually have a few that trickle in the last couple of weeks. So if it's something you'd like to attend, we're going to cover the whole ops thing from top to bottom. So what a company structure should look like. We're going to look at job descriptions and how to serve customers well. We're going to look at contracts and, how to increase profitability and improve efficiencies. We're going to give you basically a blueprint for what your operations could look like. So if you want more info about that, check it out. I'll be sending an email out as a follow-up to this. It'll have links to the registration page for this. So without any further ado, let's dive right into our first question. And this one comes from one of the members in our group. And I'm summarizing his question, but basically we're struggling to land accounts in the 5K range. So this person, Jeff, has actually been working with you a little bit, and they're starting to get some bids. So starting to see a little bit of traction in that area, but haven't seen anything drop in the bucket yet. So looking for suggestions. I can feel their anticipation for this like happening. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the what I would say right off the top is that kudos to narrowing your focus, and I think that's one thing we talked about is in our workshops and other things is really getting and narrowing your focus on to a certain type of customer that you want to serve. I think, gosh, I don't have a great answer. What I would say is the key to this, to landing and getting bids, is simply consistency. And I know that seems probably oversimplified, but what I mean by consistency is continually, on a consistent basis, reaching out to these building owners, these people in these positions who are making decisions on the janitorial and cleaning work, consistently staying in front of them with telephone calls and emails. And I know that seems simplistic, but I think that's the key. And in staying in contact with them, giving them information that would set yourself apart from other janitorial companies that are calling on them, which there are a lot of them. Now, part of this too, I think in the longer version, when I saw the longer version of the question, was asking a little bit more, some questions about networking and those kinds of things. I certainly think in markets like BOMA, I think that's a good organization to, if there's a local chapter, to network there. I haven't found chambers of commerce meetings are necessarily that great of a place to network. Again, I go back to, I think, and I'm not offering a ton here other than consistently stay in front of these folks with well-timed emails and telephone calls.
Yeah. And I would just say to add, just be patient.
Yeah.
So as I look at what's happened with us over the years, there have been periods of 3, 4, 5, 6 months where nothing landed.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the
process pays off over time.
It does. It does. And I think there's some other things that you can look at. So sometimes I think folks would fall back to, gosh, I'm not getting enough appointments. Part of not getting enough appointments is there's not always that many people that are in the market. The key is when a customer is ready to buy, when they're ready to say, I want to start getting proposals, that they think of you first. That's the most important part.
That's good. Okay. Second question. This one's a bit general, but I think we can, and it's an important one, is what's the most effective way to market your business? I was just reading a book the other day, and there was a fantastic quote that said that people who do not market or advertise their business are like a guy that winks at a girl in a dark room. He knows what he's doing, but nobody else does.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
And so we do need to, there is a place for getting your name out there to people. But when I think about marketing, advertising, I think about a giant black hole. Like I think of billboards and TV commercials. And so like the shotgun approach. So maybe just talk, Jeff, for just a second about how we can market effectively and wisely.
Yeah. And
on a budget too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and here's a key question is that we all need, we ask it, everybody needs to ask it, is what is the best use of resources, money and time for my particular market? And I think that's important because, for instance, if you're in a densely populated area with tons of competitors, one of the most important things that you can have is a website with good SEO strategies so that people can find your website. And so let's talk real quick. So marketing efforts, inbound, let's talk inbound for a minute, which would be everything related to your website, some search engine optimization strategies to help people find your site, Google My Business, working on those things, maybe even some pay-per-click stuff. We've done some of that, not with much success, but that idea of helping people find your business, especially if you're in a densely populated area with a lot of competitors, it might be worth spending some money to help people find you when they do Google searches. I do think in a local market, some advertising, traditional advertising is not a bad thing, some billboards and those kinds of things, but again, it can be a black hole and it's hard to measure that effectiveness. Secondly, and I'll throw this into marketing as well, is outbound efforts. And when I think marketing, let's just wrap it all in business development. Telephone calls, email campaigns, very good. Again, in a densely populated area or a place where you have time to get in places, I don't think it's bad to pull in parking lots, walk inside and introduce yourself and hand a card or some kind of a gift. Again, that seems old school and kind of antiquated, but I also think there's some value in that as well.
It does seem old school. How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 57.
Okay.
Yeah.
If someone came to my office and I didn't know and brought me a gift, I would
think they were 57 years old. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So, but I think it's both sides, inbound and outbound is important.
Yes, but the key would be to be really targeted. So be intentional about what you're trying to do and not just throw a bunch of paint and see what sticks.
Based on how much money, time, and effort you have. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. Okay, this is a question. This question actually surprised me a little bit. So this company says that they seem to be losing some bids on some larger accounts to companies that have other facility management services like landscaping. So maybe why is this happening? How do you navigate that?
Yeah.
So I can't think of many that we've lost. I know there's been some accounts that we actually had to bid on some of that stuff, like some colleges, and we just probably weren't the most experienced vendor in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you have experience with this sort of thing happening much, or
not a ton? I mean, I'll tell you where it tends to land more often is in the colleges, small colleges. We've had a few that have done that wanted to include all of their grounds and everything into one. But I haven't had that happen too much. But I wrote down a few things to think about. First is for us to understand why a customer would ask for this. And the reality of it is probably their plate is full and they're thinking, gosh, if I could put landscaping, maintenance, janitorial, and even maybe if it's an industrial customer, security, if I could just find somebody that would do all of that stuff, that would be great, because that would take a load off my plate. So that's the first thing. And then I think a good strategy is, to the best of your ability, to convince them to separate the janitorial. And the janitorial is different than maintenance and landscaping. And here's how it's different, I believe, is that janitorial is a service that shows up every single day to your plant. So it's or your facility, your medical office, whereas these other things are come in and do the work and leave. And so stress the importance of having a relationship with your company where you might not necessarily need to have a relationship with a landscaping company if you can convince them to separate it. The second thing would be, or third thing would be, is to consider partnering with a local landscaping company and an HVAC company and maybe some other service provider to kind of pull that together if this occurs. But that's tough. And then the last one I wrote here is maybe consider getting into that business. I don't know if it's within your capabilities and it's something you're interested in.
So if it's coming up a lot in your area, maybe it's you're uncovering an opportunity there. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Now we do work for some larger maintenance companies that subcontract to us, but they're more like vendor management. Like they do the heavy maintenance work and then sub out.
That's right.
To others.
There's
several instances of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes if you're going after, these accounts typically tend to be like really, really big that do this sort of thing.
That's what I've seen.
So if there's some more details about this that you'd like to reach out to me about and sort of we can dialogue about it, we're happy to do that. So this is a little bit of a unique question. Okay, so this is a fun question. This one comes from Daniel Clem. So Daniel will be fine with me outing him on this one. So Daniel's down in Oklahoma, and he says, what are your thoughts about expanding into the equipment repair business? And I would just add any other unrelated business. And the reason he asked this question is that he had someone approach him wanting to sell that business. There's an opportunity to scout the customers, the tools, all that kind of stuff. And And this is a question, if you are beginning to find success in any area, so the guy that coaches me always says success or opportunities always follow success. And one of the questions that you'll always need to answer as an entrepreneur and a business owner is, what opportunities do I want to pursue? So there's always going to be more opportunities than there are time and resources to pursue them. And so before we even begin to try to answer a question like this, we need to be aware that this is not the only opportunity, and there's going to be others that come down the pike. So I've got a couple thoughts on this, and Jeff, you can, because I know this is a question that's been really relevant to us too, as we've looked and are in the process of expanding into an unrelated business. I think you need to make sure that you have a vision, sort of a vision framework for your organization, or even you personally, like where you're trying to take this thing. And also in your mind, a strategy for how you would like to get there. So I'm a big fan of, you need those vision strategy questions in place, like the what questions, before you answer the how questions. So whether or not you should buy this or that business is a how question. Like, should we tactically go and do this today? I don't think you can answer that question until you have some other bigger questions answered before. So like, what kind of company do you want to be? Do you want to be the kind of organization that is comprised of multiple different entities, and what does that look like, and how is that managed? You know, is that the best use of your time and your skill sets, that sort of thing. So you don't want to have shiny stuff syndrome, which is what a lot of us entrepreneurs have. We get excited about new ideas, and we're like, well crap, I was successful at the janitorial business. I'm sure I could change tires, you know? So I would have those things in place before you even consider an opportunity. So I'm not saying this is a bad opportunity. It may be excellent. But you want to do it with some intentionality. So you want to maybe talk like tactically, like what are some of the issues that can be related to this, like stuff as we've navigated. We're looking at an energy management company, and so there are some questions that raise in our minds of how do we do this? How do we protect the mothership?
That's right.
And also properly invest in the new thing? Can we share resources? You know, some of those considerations.
Yeah, and I think so let's take this energy business, for example. This was, as we began to think about, and we have thought about it, one thing that we're familiar with is buildings, and we're in buildings, and that's what we do for as a service. In this particular case, I happen to know someone who was in the energy management business, and as we began to talk about it, you could begin to see some amount of synergy or dovetailing with managing a company's natural gas and electricity spend, and how the customers there may be some overlap on customers. So I think that's one thing to look at. Is there overlap on customers? Is there something that might create some of that? The second thing is there enough customers that would buy the service that you're providing that would not stretch you beyond or well beyond your current geographic limits? So for instance, if someone offered us a business in Utah, we would probably say, gosh, that's way far away from anything that we're serving. If a lot of the market were national, we might not go after it, other than something that we could do from.
So by this overlap, like a simple example would be if a customer wanted you to start providing chemicals and toilet paper and paper towels, like you're really becoming a Jansan supplier, although you're not forming a business, but it's so much overlap that it makes all the sense in the world to do it.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody asks you to change air filters in their building, a little more overlap, but not as much as the other.
Right.
But if they wanted you to change tires in their vehicles, you know, it starts. And so I think you have to ask that question. And also, as you think about purchasing a business, most of us, and I know this is probably the case for most of you, you're not large enough to buy a company that's going to stand on its own 2 feet, like have its own sales team, its own payroll and accounting team. And so, you know, a business like that is probably going to cost, you know, $1 million plus. And so So I think what you're going to have to consider when you think about buying any other small business is what sort of resources am I going to have to share, and what does that look like? Can my accounting department handle this without there being anything suffering? How are we going to handle sales efforts? And is there going to be someone to oversee the operations? So someone who's overseeing ops in your janitorial business, it's going to be really hard for them to split their time into two totally different industries. So these would just be some questions that I think are worth wrestling through. I feel like I just peed on your fire there a little bit, Daniel, but this may be a great opportunity worth considering. So I'm a huge fan of pursuing other opportunities, sometimes to my own detriment.
And this may be it, I guess I would say too, if you have in this particular case, someone that's on your team that is doing a lot of that for your company, what are the customers that are available? There may be a lot of school districts and other companies or other organizations in the area who have a lot of repair, cleaning equipment and those kinds of equipment. There may be a nice market for it if you have somebody on board that already knows how to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, interesting question, but super relevant question. What are the pros and cons of allowing admin or sales personnel in our industry to work from home? So because of COVID, a lot of people are working from home now. So is this a good thing? So I want to hear your thoughts, Jeff. Like just practically speaking, what do you think? And I have some cultural things I think that weigh in on this one.
So here comes somebody that's 57 talking. I would prefer that people be here because I think it creates opportunities for us to interact. We can have quick conversations. Those kinds of things are nice. And so that's a con of somebody working at home, is that you don't just have the person-to-person interaction. You can still have meetings and those kinds of things. I would say the pros to it right now especially are it allows flexibility, and it allows you to potentially recruit people to come to work for you who might not have come to work for you to begin with.
Yeah, so the pro would be, one of them is it allows this level of team building and communication here that you just can't get digitally.
That's right.
Yeah, I think there's some cultural components worth thinking about here too, that it's really hard to build a strong company culture when you're working remote. Like humans were designed for face-to-face interaction. That's how we build relationships, like real meaningful relationships. So some level of in-person interaction has to happen. But maybe, so if we're looking at some of the pros of this though, I think Jeff is right. I think flexibility is a big one. I mean, the job market's tight. So anything we can do to be flexible is a good thing. I do think there's a shift, and I think it's a positive shift, that if we want to be more pro-family, which we do here, and another one will be pro women, and by that I mean like just being more flexible in how and when women can work in the workplace. There's just a reality that moms oftentimes feel this tension of taking care of kids and also being gone, and so if we make it a requirement that you have to be here 40 hours a week, that would make it really difficult and probably unnecessarily difficult on some people. So the more level of flexibility we can have, I think it opens up our reach of people who could work for us. I think it allows us to maybe serve those people better, promote their families in a better way without losing some of that other stuff. So I don't know what the appropriate balance is there, and I guess you have to figure that out.
I think it's a hybrid. I think you can say, hey, listen, we're going to have person-to-person time maybe once a week, and the rest of the time you're at home, but we do need to kind of come together. So yeah, I think both are good.
Because we have that. We have moms, we have single moms, we have guys on our floor that have kids out of college, we have others with little kids at home. So like there's this wide variety of people, and I think this maintaining this in person with a level of flexibility is good. So I don't think there's a cut and dry answer to this, but I think it's possible to have some of this done from home, but there certainly needs to be that level of in person as well.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. This is a good one here. So this comes from our friends up in Michigan. So and we're excited to see you all in a couple weeks. I think a few of you are coming down for the ops workshop. So how do you handle the pricing of tag work? So is there standardized pricing? because tag work can get a little complicated, or it's all so unique, and who's actually selling this work. And so I'll dive right in on this, and you can pick up, Jeff, with any additional comments. So early on, it was when we were a smaller company, it was our operations manager, which at one point was my dad. Another point that sort of was me and one other guy. And this is when we were $1 million to $2 million in revenue. And we would go out anytime a customer wanted ad work, we would go out and look at it and price it. But as we grew and as our area managers began to handle the relationships with the customers and the employees, we wanted the manager to be able to communicate with the customer about tag work and price that tag work for them. Now, I know this immediately raises questions in your mind, especially if you're a control freak of any sort, that what if they don't price it right? What if we lose money on it? And those sorts of concerns. So a couple of ways to combat that is, I think it is appropriate to have a standardized pricing sheet for various types of tag work. And so when we first went about doing this, and if any of y'all want this, I can shoot you an email with this original tag work pricing guide. I don't even know that we use it anymore. We probably have something else in place, but we put 3 tiers of pricing on there. That's, let's say it was floor work, stripping and waxing, and maybe for a really large job it was 24 to 28 cents a square foot. A medium job was 29 to 35, and a small job was 35 to 45, something of that sort. And we did that for carpet cleaning and window washing and additional labor. So they had a sheet that they gave them some guidelines or some guardrails that they could look at to help price. So that was point number 1. And the second thing is we started giving our managers commission on that project work. So when they would sell a job, depending on how profitable it was, they would get a percentage of those profits. And I think it's 20% of the profits is what they get now. So you combine those two together, they, at a certain point, they start realizing what they need to do in order to make profit. And when they start getting a little slice of that profit, it gets to be really motivating. It actually got so motivating last year that we had to change our system because our people got so aggressive with project work that we felt like other things were slipping through the cracks. So, and do you have any additional thoughts on that, Jeff?
No, I think the standardized pricing on the things that are more cut and dried, windows, carpets, floors, those are really good. If we get invited out and it's something like we've got an overhead job, well, an overhead job is how to clean rafters and those kinds of things, or a post-construction cleaning. Those are things that I'm not really equipped to do. So if I am part of going out there, I'll always bring somebody from an operations standpoint to do that, because those are just hard to do. But in our organization, I try to move all of those ad services away from the main day-to-day cleaning.
Gotcha. Yeah, someone asked what tag work is. It's basically just project work or add-on work, work that you tag on to what you're currently doing in terms of your contract. Maybe it's an acronym for something.
Yeah, I've always wondered what it was, but anyway, additional services.
Okay. So before this webinar, I went and chatted with our HR manager and our company president about this particular one. So this is a question everybody has right now. And if you're not struggling with this, we want you to talk to us because you know something that we don't know. But how are we handling the staffing shortage? And I think what many people would call a crisis in staffing. And there's a whole series of things related to this. There's the COVID aspect. There's a lot of people just not working. You have the baby boomers retiring. You have people not having as many kids. You have government benefits. I mean, it's a whole host of factors.
Sure. Yeah.
Wages are going crazy. So a whole lot of factors that are going into this particular one. So what are we doing internally to combat it, and how are we handling it with customers? So internally, there's been a few things. As I chatted with 2 of our guys this morning on this issue, we are making some wage adjustments. So starting pay is going up, and even pay for existing employees is going up. And that works in some cases. So, but as a general rule, people are hiring at such high wage rates right now that those increases, I think we need to do them, and I think it helps, but I don't think it's having a tremendous effect by itself. So if we move from $11 to $12 an hour, but you can go flip burgers at Wendy's for $15 an hour, I just don't think we're close enough to that $15 an hour range. To 11 to 12 just isn't that big of a deal when they can go make $3 more an hour somewhere else. And most of our markets that we're in are going to be smaller markets. So they're going to be populations of 50 to 100,000 in the county or a couple counties. We do work in Nashville and Indianapolis and some other bigger metropolitan areas. And oddly enough, some of our small markets are demand really high wages too. It just depends on which market it is.
Yeah, there's just not many people that live there.
There's not. Yeah, and there's some manufacturers that pay a lot of money, and so everybody's making 15, 20 bucks an hour in that town. So it's a little bit unique. So wages are certainly one. Our team has been trying to focus on retention, has been a big one for us. So if you can get within the ballpark of pay to where you're comparable to the other kinds of jobs, let's say within a dollar or so an hour, then a lot of other factors come into play. And I think these are factors that you need to sell your team on. So focus on retention just as much, if not more, than actually recruiting. So if you keep the people you have, then the recruiting issue is not nearly as challenging. And so that's something they're focusing on. So being able to be flexible with hours, making sure the culture is strong and relationships are good, and we're really taking care of our people well, I think can help increase or this retention rate that we'd like to see. We're spending probably more money now than we've ever spent on recruiting, and we're getting less results than we've ever gotten on recruiting. It's a comment that Brian, our company president, made this morning. But we have been taking some of this to the customer. So we've got a long list of price increases that we're working on. And basically what's happening with those is all of the money we're getting from the increase is trickling right down to the employees. So we're jacking up wages and passing that on to the customer. Our profitability is not changing, but it's just necessary for us to be able to maintain. So do you have any additional thoughts that?
I guess what I would say is this highlights, though, how important it is to provide really, really good service, because you can imagine if someone's got a budget for janitorial services and they set it at the first of the year, and mid-year you're coming and saying, I need you to spend 20% more on your cleaning because I have to hire people in our market, $15 and $16 an hour. If the relationship is strong, I think you have a better chance of getting that. And I think I'm probably stating the obvious, but it really highlights the idea of how important the relationship is with your customers when you ask them for an increase.
Yep, good point. Good point. So make sure those relationships are strong. And Jeff, we're starting at, what are you bidding jobs on now in terms of labor rates? Maybe give me a couple of markets or.
Yeah, generally in our market here in Kentucky, Southern Indiana, we're bidding, our labor rates are $14 and $15 an hour. As we move on up closer to Indianapolis, we're in the $16 to $18 an hour. And the tough thing is, and
it's base pay for base cleaners.
Mm-hmm. The tough thing is, and I was just in a manufacturing facility on Monday, and we talked about the idea that, again, their current vendor is struggling to keep people because the current arrangement was set up at $11 and $12 an hour, and now they can't hire anybody. And so I talked with the prospective customer about one of the things they might do is approach their current vendor and say, hey, would it help you if we were able to increase our budget a bit, but no, we've raised our prices considerably, our wages considerably on our prospective or on our proposals as well. So yeah.
Yep, that's good. If anybody has any silver bullet answers for this one, we're all ears. We'll pay you a lot of money for that answer. All right. This is a good question related to this. Jeff, is how can I keep my foot on the gas pedal of growth, knowing that we're having major issues with staffing?
Yeah.
So you talk about this all the time, that
Yeah.
you know, Jeff is really super selfless. He's a company guy, and so you want to sell because it's good for the company, but you also don't want to piss off operations.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
I liken it to, I'm looking over the boat and our operations team barely has their head above water and I throw them a cinder block. That's the picture. And so I don't want to do that. So this is a great question. I kind of thought about, two or three things. And the first, and I even wrote a little LinkedIn post about this called kind of feathering the brakes. So we don't want to slam on the brakes on sales, but we don't want to keep the gas pedal down. So it's kind of, we want to try to do something in between. So the first thing I suggest is look at your prospect list with your key leadership and just circle, highlight, identify the key prospects that you said, gosh, we really want to do business with these folks strategically. They're in the right place. They're in the right segment. They're in the right segment and place. And so identify those folks and continue your normal sales effort with them. Secondly, those who are off that, let's call that the A list. Anybody that's off the A list, it might not be a bad idea to just cease making telephone calls if you're doing outbound telephone calls and just continue to hit them with appropriately timed emails. So you're still staying in contact with them, but you're not kind of making the hard sale to try to get them to come on and do business with you now. So that's the second thing. And then I think now that you've got that in place, you think, well, what am I going to do with all my time? I think, so there's three things. I would say first would be just looking on this would be a great time to look at your sales processes. See if they appropriate. Look at your call cadence and your nurture cadence. Secondly, I would say this is a great time to develop all kinds of content, write articles, shoot videos, create LinkedIn posts. Be a great time to just build out that library of content. And then I think the third thing would be just some professional development. So get your BSCAI certification, CBSE certification. Just immerse yourself in becoming a better sales and marketing person. I think this is a good time to do that as well.
I mean, this would be an important time to make sure, this is when it's critical to make sure it's the right kinds of customers.
For sure,
That you would feel the worst if you brought on a crappy customer.
It'd be,
but if you brought on one at great margins, whatever, ideal customer, you could at least be excited about it because it's like, this is exactly what we wanted. Let's just figure it out. It wouldn't crush the soul of the operations team.
That's right.
If you got the right thing.
If you get the right thing and it looks like a customer that you could probably establish a long-term relationship with, those are good ones.
Yeah.
Those are good ones to stay on right now.
But if you said, here's 10 daycare centers.
Our operations.
They might find your body in the river.
Yeah, they would drag me into the water with them and push me to the bottom.
Okay, that's good. That's helpful. That is a really significant issue. That's there right now.
Yeah.
But I think it's wise to be on the gas pedal but feathering, like you said.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lose that momentum. Okay. Whoops. This is not question 7. This is question 9. This will be our last question. So, and this is a really good one. And I'm going to read this full question. So, because there's an example that goes with it, that this is an actual scenario that's going on for somebody. So they say, how far do you go to make a customer happy when there's an issue? In your opinion, where's the boundary line, both in terms of making the issue right and the treatment of the team, like of your own team in the process? So here's a recent example. A daycare we service has had some monthly items that were being missed. The principal asked for them to be done this month, and we of course scheduled that work. When she called out the fact that it had been missed, I offered a partial credit for work that was missed, or a deeper clean to help the building catch back up, and her response was to demand both, which we obliged as it's a large account with strong margins. Essentially, like where is the line between swallowing your pride and saying no more?
Yeah, good question.
So I'll start here. I think in situations like this, it's helpful. I think of a lot of decision-making stuff in this regard. It's helpful to have some boundary lines that that it's like, okay, I'm not going to cross there. So we could think of those as guardrails that are helpful to us. And so one of those, I think, is once a customer begins to distrust you and to belittle you and that sort of thing, it becomes a significant morale killer. And I don't know that there'd be any amount of profit that would be worth someone treating us sort of in an inhumane kind of way. I think our team as a whole would say, we hate to lose that profit, but we just don't want that customer anymore.
For sure.
You feel like that's a good boundary line there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, and so it's difficult in a situation like this, because you might bite the bullet. And so if this was a one-time occurrence or happened once or twice a year, you could probably put up with it. But if this was happening every month, the first question you'd want to resolve is, are we really doing a good job? In comparison to other accounts, like, is this customer being unreasonable? And if they are being unreasonable, that's when you need to start looking at, is this account, even though it's profitable, becoming a net loss for us in terms of the energy it's zapping from us? So if you have a really good manager that's managing this account, and let's say they've got 10, 15 other accounts, if this customer is eating up 50, 60, 70% of their emotional bandwidth, it really limits them as a manager to be able to effectively manage the other business. So my encouragement, at least to begin with, is do not be a slave to the profitability of any one individual customer. Do you have any additional thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, it's and we've got a couple of those customers right now that we're working through what that is. I think at a certain point, a conversation with the customer to voice these concerns with them when it's appropriate is a good thing. With this one particular customer I'm thinking about, we've went as far as to say, hey, we don't seem like we're making you happy with our service. I'm using, this isn't the right term language, but we're not making you happy. And maybe it's time for us to part paths before this thing kind of gets to an impasse. And in the first round we had with that customer, they kind of backpedaled a bit and said, whoa, no, because they were pleased enough with our work that they didn't want to see us leave. And so I wouldn't say call their bluff is the wrong way to do it, but I think there is a certain amount of saying, hey, it doesn't seem like we're pleasing you, and maybe the best thing for us is to pack our stuff up and kind of head on down the road, and we'll help you in your transition to another vendor.
Yeah, so this might not be a great analogy, but no woman wants to date a man that's needy and is not confident and is emotionally weak and all that sort of thing. Right? They want someone that's confident. So oftentimes we find ourselves in a position of feeling like we're under the thumb of the customer. And that's really kind of a perverted relationship. Like, it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
So there should be a mutual respect. Now, we are there to serve them, but we do that with confidence and integrity and with our head held high.
Yeah.
And so we're happy to stoop down and clean their toilets, but we also want a measure of respect back for that. And so I think going in and having that confidence is important. And I think by not calling their bluff, but saying, hey, we just may not be a good fit, is a good way to say, like, we're going to maintain this with our head held high. If that means we need to walk away, we're good with that.
Yeah,
we're good with that.
Because what may happen in bringing up that language to say, hey, you know what, this might not be a good fit. We'll work this thing out until you can find yourself another vendor. That allows them some time to go, gosh, now I got to go out and find somebody else. And if they do find another vendor, your ability to serve them well to the end might create an opportunity for you to come back in with them. We're hoping that occurs with a pretty good sized manufacturing facility that we lost. That was kind of they were like that to us. They would kind of jerk our chain from day to day, like, you need to be doing this and you need to be doing that. But we served them well to the end, and hopefully they'll learn that we were the best vendor.
And now they're having major issues with their new vendor.
They are. And so we've just kind of continually.
And we're talking, this was a $25,000 a month account that had,
Yeah.
or 30 that had the potential to turn into 40, 50, 60.
That's right.
And we
had conversations with them, and then they said, well, maybe we need to bid this. And we said, yeah, you know what, maybe that's a good thing for you to do. And somebody came in with a lower price, and we said, no, we can't do it for that price, for what you're expecting us to do. And we walked away from it. And they're having a decent amount of difficulty with their new vendor. So it's tough to walk away from revenue, but sometimes, occasionally, it's a good thing.
Yep, that's good. All right, so listen, for those in our mastermind group, we'll have a copy of this webinar up here within the next day or two, and I'll send out a copy of it to everybody in the group. If you guys have any questions, feel free to dialogue in the forum. If there's anything I talked about here that you want some more follow-up on, if there's a document or something I mentioned, just email me and I'll shoot that out to you. If any of you need a coaching call scheduled with either Jeff or myself, just let me know or let Bethan know, and we'll get that scheduled. So don't forget about the ops workshop. If you haven't attended one of those, we'd encourage you to. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're super excited about it. And if there's anything we can do to help, just let us know. We'll talk to you guys soon.